Hey everyone, Adam here with another RimWorld guide. This guide is a little different and is going to be part of a series regarding different defensive options. Using killboxes has always been a hot button topic in RimWorld. Some are against the very idea and some love trying to optimize them. As always, I stand by the stance of do whatever's fun for you. I've played and had fun both ways. So in this RimWorld guide to defense, I'm going to be talking about one of, if not the absolute strongest killbox setups in the entire game, the Singularity Killbox. And no, this doesn't even utilize the corner punch exploit. So what is the Singularity Killbox? Well, a couple of years ago, a video was posted on a Chinese website similar to YouTube, which included a very strange looking compact killbox. Eventually, the design ended up being posted in my Discord. I and several others were shocked at just how insanely efficient it was. When we refer to it, we'd say the Chinese killbox as a shorthand, but we eventually tried using Google Translate to get more information on the design, philosophy, and original creator. But apparently that technology still isn't perfect. One word that kept coming up though was singularity, forcing raids into a single small footprint area and destroying them in brutal efficiency. So how do you build it? One great thing about the overall design is that it is very versatile. You can actually extend the setup quite a bit, however doing so does make it overall slightly less efficient and takes up a lot more space. For ours, we're going to start out by making 8 doors in a row. At the end of each door, we're going to put a single barricade. On either side of the door line, make 8 more barricades. You can also use sandbags or even chunks here. The higher HP material, the better though. From the side you want the enemies to enter, add 7 more barricades. Now surround this entire object with a wall. Again, the higher HP, the better. On the side you want the enemies to come in at, put additional doors and make this a single wide tunnel. Now on the other side, the side in which you want your shooters to stand, we're going to skip a tile from the barricade and add another door. Above and below this door, we add more barricades. Next to the door, another wall. Doors on either side of this wall as well. Beside each of these doors, you place a chair. Don't worry, I'll talk more about that soon. Now we connect walls on this side like this. You can then close up this side of the kill box or leave the back end open. I suggest making the area reasonably beautiful so that your pawns are happier while doing their dirty work. Now, be sure to put one inlaid wall 2 squares in the back. More on that later. Now go through and make sure all the doors are set to be held open. If this is way too complex, I do have a few other resources for you to utilize when building your own. I've included a still image you can reference on my website, adamversuseverything.com/guides. I've also added a page on my website in which you can download the blueprint and import it into your own game. In order to do this last one, you will need to use the mod Blueprints by Fluffy. Both of these links will be in the description as well as the pinned comment. So how does this killbox work and why is it so effective? Enemies enter from the right. The enemies literally cannot shoot any of your pawns from those first 3 green squares, but your pawns can shoot them. Super unfair. The barricades force enemies to pass through the held open doors, and moving through a series of held open doors slows units down a ton. If you look at the marked areas where the colonist stands, the green areas have the best line of sight as opposed to the enemies, so fill in those places first. The blue areas still work, so feel free to utilize those as well if you have the pawn count. Now, what about the other color-coded tiles and doors? As mentioned, the enemies will never fire from the 3 outermost green squares or beyond as long as you only have pawns in the colored squares on the other side, even though you can shoot them. Please note that the colors here are purely for demonstrating the mechanics and have no effect on the actual setup. For the 2 middle doors, well, it's kinda complicated. Technically speaking, enemies can hit some of the colonist spots from either of those 2 areas, but in practice, they seem to basically never fire from those positions. Stranger still, if this killbox faces east, they are even less likely to shoot back. Why, you may ask? I asked the same thing. I have no idea. Enemies that make it all the way to the last 3 doors will either stop and shoot or press forward to engage in melee combat. However, you can reset the enemy once they start approaching this position by running out the back and letting the doors close behind you. You can even have another secondary kill box to lead them to. This is always a good idea anyway in case one gets damaged or destroyed and you can't repair it before the next raid. Okay, so about those chairs. For some reason, the chairs allow adjacent shooters, not the ones standing on the chairs or even the ones behind the chairs, to actually be able to shoot further. There's something weird happening with the peeking mechanic which allows those shooters to have more line of sight. Now, what's with those inlaid walls? Well, EMP blasts can travel through open corners. This area will allow your EMP tossers to break low shields or shield belts as well as stun mechs while being completely safe from retaliation. Which guns are best in this setup? Almost any gun can work in this setup, but close range and medium range guns are king. As such, you guessed it, the chain shotgun is the ultimate tool for this kill box. SMGs, assault rifles, even things like short bows and auto pistols in the early game can do just fine though. You mainly just want to avoid things that have forced miss and will tear your walls open. Miniguns. Slower to fire or longer cooldown weapons such as sniper rifles and charge lances aren't great either, as it allows enemies to close the gap before your pawn is ready for another shot. Does this kill box work against in-game raids? Yes, absolutely. I recently did a bunch of playthroughs on stream against a modded storyteller called Winston Waves. With these exact kill boxes, I often had to dispatch 25,000 raid points of centipedes. That's right, 2.5 times more centipedes in a single raid than what normal 500% losing is fun can throw at you at max wealth. Does this work in the early game? Yes. As soon as you can get it built and scrap a few ranged weapons together, it can work. In the early game, you may have to reset more often as your pawns won't be bullseyeing all their awful short bow hits, however. Does this kill box work against pirates? Indeed it does, thanks to the peeking mechanics allowing you to take out the huge threats like Doomsday Rocketeers without them being able to fire back, coupled with the EMP Cubby's ability to dispatch annoying low shields or shield belts. You should make easy work of pirates. Does this kill box work against mechs? Absolutely. It is disgustingly efficient. I had 6 or 7 pawns take out well over 50 centipedes while the rest of the colony went about their daily lives. Absolutely insane. Does this kill box work against animals? It does, however, animals do tend to stack up more even with collision, so you may have to reset more often depending on your firepower. Does this kill box work against sappers or breachers? The short answer is no, unfortunately. However, there is a way to manipulate sapper AI to enter your base exactly where you want them to. If you use that trick, it will work on sappers. However, breachers are still not impacted by this kill box. Alright, here's some really important things to remember if you're going to try this setup. Make sure to cause collision. I have another quick guide on pathing and collision. If you do not use collision, then enemies can still overwhelm you easily. A link to the guide is in the description and the pinned comment. Use more than one EMP thrower, especially for pirates. Sometimes a low shield will go off between EMP blasts, allowing pirates to close the gap and causing you to be in danger or have to reset earlier or more often. Low shields are also the reason your EMP thrower should stand further back from the inlay when facing pirates. Keep an eye on those walls, especially the inlay. Have someone that can repair nearby. You can force repair while drafted. Make sure your other colonists are zoned to not enter the kill area or behind it during combat. This can mess up the targeting and allow enemies to attack those spots, putting those roaming colonists in danger. Make sure you have a means of pathing bait set up before the raid spawns. Again, this is covered in my short pathing and collision guide you can find in the description or the comments. It's advisable to add another held open door touching the inlay so that if the wall starts to get destroyed before you can repair it, your EMPer can run down and shut the door, blocking enemies from flooding in. Clean the tunnel of debris often. Dead bodies and items laying on the door path can cause raiders to instead decide to path over the barricades, giving them a speed boost. Try to empty the box after each raid. Check on your pawn's needs often. One of the amazing things about this setup is that it takes so few pawns to make it work. You can easily bring in a replacement shooter while letting one of your hungry, tired, or bored pawns take a break. In fact, I like to put some food and recreation nearby. And I think that does it. You have now been imparted with the knowledge of the Singularity Killbox. Whether you want to utilize its amazing power in some of your runs, or want to scoff at the notion of using something so unfair, is up to you. Be sure to keep an eye out for more upcoming defense guides in this series on my channel. If you enjoyed this RimWorld Killbox and defense guide, or it helped you out at all, please consider subscribing to the channel, liking the video, leaving a comment down below, and sharing it with others. If you'd like to reference a written version of this guide, be sure to head over to my website, adamversuseverything.com/guides. And as always, thank you for watching.